So this is Ramon, channel is Alpha 4, and this is the second time I'm shooting this video. Today, I want to talk about the Phantom of the Opera. So I'm going to give you a quick summary. I'm going to leave out the very end, just for the sake of spoilers of a book that's, well, over 100 years old. So the Phantom of the Opera is about a woman named Christine and her love affair with the Phantom. And basically, Christine wants to be a great opera singer. Her father dies. She meets a man in a cemetery. She thinks it's the spirit of her father or an angel sent by her father or something like that. She calls him the angel of music or the spirit of music. And the story continues from there. The actual story is written as a mystery or detective novel, while it should actually be a thriller or a gothic romance. But it never quite gets there till you get toward the back end. So the first quarter of the novel is a detective novel. And that is very unexpected. The last half of the novel is the gothic romance and the horror. And the last half of the novel is amazing. It is worth reading for the back half of the novel. So, as the detective story begins, there's been some disappearances and some murders, and a guy in the future is looking back at some old documents, and he's trying to figure out exactly what the true story of the opera ghost, it's not the Phantom of the Opera, it's the opera ghost, is. And the basic gist is that Christine fell in love with the opera ghost, and the opera ghost fell in love with her. But then she fell in love with him so much that she had to see the face of the man who had such a beautiful voice. And when she unmasked him, she sees the horror. He's deformed. He is described as a walking zombie, but he's more like someone with a birth deformity. He looks like a skeleton, and the character of Eric, who's just the opera ghost, is not as tragic as the story makes him appear, because you find out later that he was actually a well-respected spy and assassin. He served sultans and kings, and that's how he met another character called the Persian. And him and the Persian, for story purposes, were friends, but more acquaintances who had saved each other's lives. Eventually, Raoul, a childhood sweetheart of Christine, comes into the picture. But by that time, she had already unmasked the Phantom and was his fiancée or bride. Raoul tries to win her back, but she doesn't commit. Eventually, the Phantom kidnaps her, and Raoul and the Persian go off on an adventure to try to save her, and that's when the story starts getting interesting. And I won't tell you how the story ends, just in case you want to read it for yourself. But the last half of the story is very interesting, very entertaining, highly recommend. The first quarter of the novel, I would skip. Let me do some comparisons here. So, the worst Gothic novel I've ever read is supposedly the first Gothic novel, and that is The Castle of Antrano. And this is boring. It's about a giant. That's what it's about. Spoiler alert, it's a giant. This is a terrible book. It's the worst thing I've ever read. Most boring thing I've ever read. But my two favorite Gothic novels are going to be Dracula and Carmilla. I think these are great. And they have the same structure. They have an ingenue, Madam Mina, and I forget the ingenue's name in Carmilla, the girl that she seduces. It's actually very interesting and very sad. And both of these stories have ingenues. Christine is an ingenue, and it actually comes off very poorly in The Phantom of the Opera. Because in The Phantom of the Opera, She is severely underdeveloped, even though she runs the theater from behind the scenes. She knows all the backstage people. She is written as if she is a child, even though she's the star of the opera. Even though she takes care of people behind the scenes, even though she knows everyone in the tunnels and the backstage. In fact, the only character who's not sexist or misogynist in the Phantom of the Opera is Eric, is the Phantom of the Opera. All the rest, including the hero, are very flat. Every character in this book is flat. There's no development, and that's a problem. And so it does not compare to these two. Well, how does it compare to the masterpiece of Frankenstein? Because it also has elements of this, of the misunderstood monster. It doesn't compare to Frankenstein at all. It does not come up to this level. Eric is an assassin. He's a master of traps. He's a master of trapdoors. He's a thief. He's a magician. He's a ventriloquist. He's kind of like Batman in a way, like an evil Batman. But he's really boring. He's not interesting like Batman. But he's a monster. And he kills people. He murders people. He kidnaps people. The only thing that he won't do is force himself on Christine. But in every other way, he's evil. So he has one redeeming quality, but he's still a kidnapper. And he's still mentally torturing this girl and emotionally manipulating her. Christine is underdeveloped, a flat character, a victim most of the time, and generally treated like a child by the narrative and by the narrator. The story mistreats her. Then there's Raoul, her boyhood, childhood love. She is also his unrequited love. Raoul is a jerk, and he doesn't come off very heroic, very impetuous, but not heroic. The Persian, on the other hand, is heroic. He's friends with Eric. They have a history together going back to when he was working for a sultan. I don't know if he was a spy master or what, but he knows Eric. He has a friendship with Eric. And at the end, that friendship in the story somehow gets thrown away and it just becomes disgust. So I'm not really sure what that's about. There's the other characters of the new managers of the Opera House, which are basically comic relief. And then there's Carlotta, who really should be the star of the show. And I think in the musical, I think Christine actually is portrayed more like Carlotta. Carlotta really is the not only the prima donna in the story, but she should be the star of the show. The fact that Christine doesn't get as much development as Carlotta, I think, is a shame, because Carlotta is a very minor character, but yet her character has an arc. Then there are other characters. There's the caretaker. There's the maid, or the whatever, the box caretaker, and the brother, and all that kind of stuff. So there are other characters, but they're really not important. My wife, who, if you don't know, she's Chinese, wants to learn about American culture and about Western literature. I would not recommend this book to her. This would bore her. It's not worthy of the hype that surrounds it, which is too bad. And also, the monster here is nothing like the monster from the musical. The musical monster is actually kind of like a romantic, slightly scarred figure. No, this guy's a monster. He's terrible. This is a 3.5. This is a 3.5 out of 5.